this is where we stop. We did, and I do B and C at home, but over a connect us to reminder. I using the FOIL method, and the FOIL just a way to remember first term, the outside, the outside. This is your first term, your outside, inside, time inside, and your last time, your last, which is, this is your out first, and this is your outside. Okay, so I mentioned last time that I'm not a big fan of the FOIL method because the FOIL method is only working for a 2 by 2. What do I mean 2 by 2? Meaning you have a binomial time a binomial. So this is what we have in terms of the binomial time a binomial. And all we're doing is, if you think in terms of this distribution or distributive property, we're doing the same thing as your FOIL method there, right? The first time the first, the outside time the outside, which take the first item and distributive to your second parenthesis. And same thing go, we take in the second item and distributive in our second parenthesis. So how do we do this? In terms that we need to take the constant time the constant, 2 times 9 to give me 18. The x times the x in terms that x times x will give me x squared, and vice versa, 2 times a negative 10 to give you a negative 20. Bring down my x because I have an x here. And that is where my blue ink come from. I took the 2x times the second parenthesis. I have to do the same thing with the 7, and 7 times 9 to give me a positive 63. Bring down my x, y, because there's an x here, and 7 times a negative 10 to give me a negative 70. And I mentioned this last time, the only reason why I write vertical is because first of all, I want to have my like term lie underneath each other. Secondly, I kind of run out of room, so I want to write vertical so that I can save some space. I put 3 problems on this page, so I don't want to write the whole horizontal item. And once you have this thing here, to finish the problem, the only thing we need to do is we need to combine like term. There's no x to the second, so I just need to bring down my 18x to the second power. And I have a negative 20x and a positive 63. And if you remember, same sign we add, in this case, we have opposite side, we have to subtract and kept the sign of the larger number. And the larger number here is 63, so the sign of the larger number will be positive. 63 take away 20 to give you 43, bring down my x. And my lonely constant, I need to bring down my lonely constant down, which in this case, negative 70. So this will be my answer. This will be my answer for this particular binomial time a binomial. So let's do B and see if you have any question. So same idea, same concept. We need to take this 3y, we distribute it to the second parenthesis. And when you take the 2, make sure you take a negative 2 and distributive to the second parenthesis. So if we attack this problem, 3 times 7 to give me 21, y times y to give me y squared, 3 times 2 to give me 6, bring down my y because there's a y here. And I'm done with the first term. I take the first term times the second item. Now I need to take a negative 2. Negative 2 times 7 to give me a negative 14. Bring down my y because of this y. And negative 2 times 2 to give me a negative 4. And again, this is what we have. My blue ink, I took the first item and I distributed to the second parenthesis. My red ink, I took the second item and distributed to the second parenthesis. The only thing we need to do after this is we need to combine like term, and the like term here will be my y. So my lonely y square, I bring it down, which is 21y squared. A negative and a positive, I need to subtract. 14 take away 6 will give me 8. Bring down my y. And again, the sign of the larger number is negative, so my 8 will be negative. Bring down my lonely 4, and you can see this will be your answer. This will be your answer for B question here. Distributive and then combine like term. Similarly for C, and again, don't worry about your X, don't worry about your Y, don't worry about your Z. It's just a variable that we need to take in consideration. The only thing changing is instead of an X, it's a Y, or instead of Y, in this case, is a Z. So we still distributive our item in, and if we distributive, we have 5Z times 8Z. This thing will give me 40. Z times Z to give me Z squared. Remember, when you multiply the variable, we need to add the exponent. 1 plus 1 will give you 2. Similarly, 5 times negative 11 will give me negative 55. Bring down my Z. Why? Because there's a Z here. And that is what we have in terms of the first item. The second item, because it's positive, so I still multiply with a positive number. 3 times 8 to give me a positive 24. Bring down my Z because of this Z. And 3 times negative 11 to give me negative 30, negative 33. And now all I need to do, just like before, consistently the same, all we need to do is combine like term. And my like term in this case will be my Z. So my 40Z to the second power, still 40Z to the second power. Consistently, same side we add, opposite side we subtract. In this case, we kept the side of the larger number. The larger number is 55. So if I subtract this, I will get 31Z and bring down my 33, my constant. And as you can see, Z squared, Z, and a constant, they all unlike term. And if they all unlike term, there is nothing we can do in terms of this thing here. We cannot add or subtract this item, okay? So this is what we have, and this is where we stopped last time, or this is what we did last time. And the reason why I am not a big fan of FOIL is FOIL can only work with 2 by 2, meaning you have binomial times a binomial. FOIL does not work. If you look at this example 3, FOIL does not work with a 2 by 3, meaning a binomial times a trinomial. We have 2 terms, right? We have 2 terms. We have 1 term here, 2 terms. We have a binomial times a trinomial, which is the 3 terms. So as you can see, there is no way we know what is the first item. Well, we know the first item is the 3x and the 6x squared, but we don't know the outside or the inside item here. So what do we do if we have this particular problem? What do we need to do? Well, we can use our method of our distributive method. So let's take a look at A, and we work our way through the item. If we have A, we have 3x plus 4 times 6x squared plus 2x plus 7. So if we were to have this problem, and you will probably have this problem somewhere along the way, what do we need to do? Well, all you need to do is just like before, we take this 3x and we distributive to every single item we have in the second parenthesis. Just like before, take the first item and distributive to the second parenthesis. And if you do that, we know that 3 times 6, that will give me 18. An x to the first power times an x to the second power will give me x to the third power. And 3 times 2, that will give me 6. And x times x will give me x squared. And 3 times 7 to give me 21. bring down my x because of this x over here. So same, if you look at this thing here, is very consistent with this item and the previous problem. The only thing different is this problem, instead of distributive into 2 like before, we distributive into 3. And this is what we have. Once we're done with the 3x, now we have to deal with the 4. And similarly, 4 times 6, that will give me 24. Bring down my x squared because of this x squared here. 4 times 2, that will give me 8. Bring down my x because of this x here. And 4 times 7 will give me 28. So question on where I have my blue ink and where I have my red ink, right? My blue arrow, that's where my blue ink come in. I took the 3x and distributive in the second parenthesis. And my red ink, I took the 4 and I distributive into the second parenthesis. The only thing left we have for this particular problem is now we need to combine light tone. And the only thing different here is because of this item, my light tone, I have 2 items, not just one. I have an x squared here and an x. So if I have 6x squared plus 24x, you can see we have a total of 30x squared. Similarly, 21x plus 8x, that will give me a total of 29x. And my lonely 28, my lonely constant, I bring it down. And we have this as our answer. And on your homework, they might ask you, they might say, what is this item? We know that this is the 3rd degree polynomial. So this is what we have in terms of A. All we did was we distributive them in. We take the first item, we distributive in the second parenthesis. We take a second item, we distributive in the second parenthesis. Okay, so let's take a look at B. Let's do B, and then we see if you guys have any question here. So if we do B, you can see that we have 5y. Don't worry about the y or the x, right? It's just a different letter. The concept is the same. 5y minus 9 times y squared plus 6y plus 8. And if you look at this item here, hopefully you guys see that it's nothing different, nothing unique. And reminder, if there's no number in front of the y, it's assumed to have an imaginary 1 there. And again, all we're doing is we take the first item and we distributive in the second parenthesis. And we need to take the second item and we need to distributive into the second parenthesis. And we need to be fair and we need to distributive in all 3 items. So first, 5 times 1, that will give me 5. Y times y to the second will give me y to the third. Again, the only thing different from the previous one is instead of x is y now. 5 times 6 to give me 30. Y times y to give me y squared. And 5 times 8 to give me 40. And bring down my y because there's a y here. And similarly, for my second item, make sure that because of the negative or the sign in front of the number is the number itself, we take a negative times 1, negative 9 times 1 to give me negative 9, bring down my y square, negative 9 times a positive 6 to give me a negative 54, bring down my y, and a negative times a positive to give me a negative 72. And ladies and gentlemen, question on where I have my black ink versus where I have my red ink. I mean blue ink versus red ink. And if you don't have question, very redundant, right? My y square, I need to add them, or in this case, I need to subtract them, and vice versa, my y, I need to subtract them. My lonely y to the third, I bring it down. I have 5y to the third. 30y squared, take away 9y squared. How many y squared do I have? Well, 30 take away 9, that will give me a positive 21 because of the bigger number is positive. And similarly, 40 take away 54, a smaller number take away a bigger number, we will get a negative item. In this case, 40 take away 54 to give you a negative 14. Bring down my y, And lastly, my negative 72, I bring it down. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is our answer for B. So question in terms of how can I took this item, how can I take this problem here and give you the answer in terms of this item here. So if you don't have question, let's take a look at C and then see if we can simplify this item or using the distributive property of this item here. So same thing go for C. Same thing go for C. You look at this particular problem, you see that it's very repetition, redundant, right? We have 4x plus 3 times 7x squared minus 11x minus 1. And if you look at this item, the only thing different, like I mentioned, is instead of a y, we have an x. And going to this item here, all we need to do is take the 4x and distributive in the second parenthesis. And if I do that, I will have 28 because 7 times 4, x to the third because x squared times x to the 1, minus 44 because 4 times a negative 11, and x to the second because x times x. And lastly, I have a negative 4. 4 times the negative 1 will give me a negative 4. Bring down my x. Very repetition. And similarly, I need to take this 3 and distributive to those 3 items. And in my item, this is what I have, is 3 times 7 to give me 21. Bring down my x squared. 3 times a negative 11 to give me a negative 33. Bring down my x. And 3 times negative 1 to give me a negative 3. And as you can see, my x squared is here, my x is here. Those are my like term. I either add them if they have the same sign, or I subtract them if they have opposite sign. So my lonely y x to the third, I bring it down. So my 28x to the third, I bring it down. One of them is positive, one of them is negative. I know I need to subtract and kept the sign of the larger number. The larger number is 44, so the sign would be negative. 44 take away 21 to give me 23. Bring down my x squared. And same sign, I need to add and kept the sign. So in this case, the sign will still be negative. 4 plus 33 to give me 37. Bring down my x. And my lonely constant, my negative 3, I need to bring it down. And ladies and gentlemen, this is our answer because x to the third cannot combine to x squared, cannot combine to the x, cannot combine to the constant. All of these 4 items are unlike term, and if they are unlike term, there's nothing you can add or subtract. You can multiply, but the operation here is not multiplication. The operation here is subtract throughout, right? So question here in terms of C, how to distributive, how to take this binomial 2 item times a trinomial 3 item. And if you don't have question, let's finish this item here. And if we have this particular item, do you agree that you can take ax times the negative 4x and ax times a negative 9x and an ax times the 12, and a times a negative 4 to give you a negative 32, x times x squared to give you x to the third. Again, we just increase by adding one more exponent. 8 times a negative 9 will give me a negative 72. An x times an x to give me x squared. And 8 times 12 to give me a positive 96. Bring down my x. And now what do I have? I have to do the same for my negative 5. And I need to take a negative 5 and distributive to every single item. And this will be my result, or this will be my item here. I run out of room, I wrote too big. Negative times a negative, that will give me a positive 20x to the second. Negative times negative will give me a positive, and 5 times 9 to give me 45x. And a negative times a positive will give me a negative 60. So a negative 60 will be here. And as you can see, this is what I should have. I have a negative 32x to the third. And similarly, opposite side, I need to subtract and keep the sign of a large number. 72 minus 20 to give me 52. Bring down my x squared. And 96 plus 45, that will give me a positive 141. Bring down my x. And my lonely 60, I need to bring it down, which is my constant 60 here. So my answer, as you can see, my answer is this item here. Negative 32x squared minus 52x, not x squared, x to the third, right? X to the third. And 52x squared plus 141x minus 60. Question with this particular problem here. Well, if you don't have question, let's stop here for today. We will continue with this item here, 5.4 tomorrow. If you have question, please stay back. If not, have a wonderful